Well, ladies and gentlemen, all hell is breaking loose in college football. I put a post on my Twitter the other day that this could be the biggest month in college football history. And here we are the second day in, and I think it's already heading that direction. All kinds of conference realignment news to talk about tonight, folks. So welcome into another live edition of Couz's Corner here. I'm here to pour you out another shot of college football content, and I'm happy to be joined by a special guest, actually two special guests. To my right, your left, I guess, whatever it is, this way, is Mr. Nathan Bomber Brown from Big 12 Mafia. How you doing tonight, Nathan?
I'm excited. So much news. It's really fun to be able to cover this stuff, and I appreciate being on your show. I'm still trying to grow to how big you are, so I appreciate even just a little bit of time.
You're well on your way, man. I appreciate you coming on tonight. I know you've been really busy with this stuff, covering it, and so for you to take time out of your day means a lot. Let's bring on guest number 2, who's also part of the Big 12 Mafia family, Immaculate. How you doing tonight, Immaculate?
Man, I'm doing great. It's been quite a day so far, and we still got a ways to go tonight, so looking forward to having a good chat with you.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. I was just telling Nathan, we were talking off air, man. It's been really hard to track all this news today.
I can understand it. I mean, if someone wasn't paying attention real closely today, they would be out of the loop, that's for sure. So
yeah,
happy to provide any kind of help in that I can today.
So, Nathan, tell everybody just tell everybody about your show, man, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. So we started a couple shows. You were one of my early mentors. Both the Holy Rivals, which is BYU Utah Holy Wars channel or show, and then Big 12 Mafia, which is BYU and the Big 12, obviously. But we cover more things, just all college football. It's been an amazing ride this last 3 months. I can't imagine a time in history when more people have had more coverage for what is turning out to be a crazy realignment season than in history. Just like your stinger said, it is new to everybody, and I'm so excited that we've been part of it.
Yeah, and at the bottom of the screen, guys, I've got the I still call it Twitter, the Twitter accounts of both Nathan at B12 Mafia and then Immaculate at Immaculate View. You guys want to check them out and interact with them on Twitter. Obviously, with all this realignment stuff going on, they're always active and tweeting out new. I guess you got to call it posting now. I don't know. I can't keep track of that either. posting new things on their. I'm gonna call it Twitter. Heck with it. That's what it's always going to be to me, man.
Works for me.
Hopefully Elon doesn't sue us for calling it Twitter. But
anyway. Right. Maybe not. I want to also thank all the people that came over when we pushed out the notifications that we were going to be on your show. All the people that either follow me or Immaculate. You guys subscribe to this show. Justin's show is amazing, and it's just getting started, everybody. So if you're here for the first time, please subscribe. Follow him on Twitter, and then also subscribe to this show. And if you have the money, donate, because us as creators, we're always running low on funds.
Yeah, I got somebody said my audio is terrible. Is this any better?
It's a challenge. That's okay. We'll get through it.
I don't know what's going on. I'm having mic issues.
Oh, you went mute. Justin, you there? No problem. No. Do you want us to start talking?
How about now?
We can hear you again. Yep.
I mean, I know it's not the greatest, but it's better than hopefully better than what it was.
It is, no doubt. No doubt.
Time for a commercial break. Yeah. Sorry. Actually, speaking of that, I do have a channel sponsor I want to give a shout out to real quick. Thanks for the reminder, VC Noel. I have a show sponsor now, guys. It's Dutch Miller Automotive. They have locations throughout the state of West Virginia. They also have locations in Charlotte, North Carolina, El Dorado, Kansas, Bristol, Tennessee, Wytheville, Virginia. So for your next automotive purchase or your next service work, please go check out Dutch Miller Automotive. I'm happy to have them as a sponsor here, and if you go there, let them know you heard about it right here on the show on Couz's Corner. So anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way and give a shout out to them. I forgot to do that on my show last night, so I figured I owe them one. But anyway, let's get on with the show here, guys. First thing I want to talk about was what I thought was the bigger news today, probably. That is, it's the Big Ten. It's now been reported, whether you coincidentally or not coincidentally, as I heard Immaculate say earlier today on another show, that they are looking now to expand and are looking much harder at Oregon and at Washington now. And I think the first person to report this was Brett McMurphy, or not Brett McMurphy, but Pete Thamel, or maybe Ross Dellinger. I can't remember, guys. You remind me.
Basically, they all touched upon it, and there was even reports put out on like CBS News. So they went out wide with the major media on this one. So you know that there was someone behind it.
Right. Absolutely. But yeah, Pete Thamel wrote a really good article on ESPN about it, guys. Go check that out after the show's over. And Nathan's got a show coming up on his channel earlier too, so be sure to catch that one. Nathan, what time are you going on? 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. rather?
9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, we're going to give a little bit of time for everybody to really sink into your show. Mine's way down the road. I don't want people thinking about that. Everybody focus here on Couz's Corner.
Hey, no biggie, man. I don't mind plugging your stuff. But anyway, and I'm sure he'll be talking, it'll be nice to get different perspectives, and that's what everybody tunes into these shows for, is all the different perspectives. But anyway,
right.
So go check, but bottom line is go check out that article by Pete Thamel after you're done watching our shows tonight. But it was really good. But basically, in a nutshell, what it said is they're looking hard at Oregon and Washington, but Stanford and Cal are also possibilities, which is the first time I've really heard that put in writing,
right,
in any media. So Nathan, let me get your thoughts first, man. What are your thoughts about that whole situation with the Big Ten?
First of all, I want to give a big shout out to VC Knoll and also Big Boppa East, who both are the Florida State contacts that I have, and they've helped us stay in the lead of kind of what's going on with the Big Ten and specifically with Florida State. There's a big, strong belief, and I think I've asked Vince to give a little bit of a follow-up, so maybe we can catch that a little later in the show. But basically, Florida State's wanting out, and with them probably will go Clemson and maybe a couple other schools. If that happens, then that'll break everything up, and the logjam will all be done. And now you're going to start looking west, and that's Oregon, Washington, and you said it's a bit of a surprise. I've actually always thought maybe Stanford would go. We had other reporting from Moen Vision that maybe Stanford wouldn't go because of their their research stuff. They didn't want to share it maybe with this new Big Ten. But regardless, we're looking at probably within the next month or so, potentially a 20-team Big Ten, which would just be amazing if you think about it, because just 3 months ago, we were told by the new conference commissioner, Tony Petitti, they weren't going anywhere. They wanted to intake UCLA and USC. They were going to sit and see how that goes for a couple of years and see if they have the bandwidth to take on more schools. Now we're looking at something where everything's blown out of the water, and it could happen a lot sooner than later.
Right. All right, Immaculate, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, like you're saying, this was the first time that Stanford and Cal were really spoken about. Now, I've always kind of felt that Stanford and Cal just weren't all that interesting. Number one, they don't even fill their home stadiums. Two, they don't really seem to care all that much about their sports, not the sports that the networks care about. And there are some other complications with Stanford that I won't get into because they're extremely boring. But I didn't actually take that side of the announcement 100% serious. I think that what they did is they served the purpose of letting everyone know, hey, the Big Ten is looking to go to 20. Like this is for real. And we'll look at those schools. What it also served to do, and I've told some folks, we have friends of ours who are ASU and Utah, and people are worried online. Take that as a message. I don't think the Big Ten is looking at ASU and Utah in this round.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they could have easily said those names. They could have easily said Washington, Oregon, ASU, and Utah. So if there was any consternation in those parties and those groups on whether they should go to the Big 12 or not, I think that's been solved.
Yeah. I know I heard Greg Flugar on his show earlier today. I did catch a few minutes of it. Apparently Utah has been on the phones hot and heavy trying to contact the Big Ten.
Right.
Maybe trying to get one of those slots.
Right.
But like you said, based on that article today, it looks like they're not really on the radar, at least not in this round.
No.
Right. Right.
And I know a lot of Utah fans are not going to be happy about that. But I mean, I don't know anybody really that expected Utah to get into the Big Ten, at least right now.
The bandwidth isn't there. The money's not there. FSU and Clemson, national champions recently, very high profile for decades and decades. Everybody needs to remember Utah's a fine program, and I have great respect for the university and the people that run that school, but they're relatively new on the national stage within the last 25 years. So, not even that, actually. It's about 20 years exactly since Urban Meyer took over. So it's great dreaming. There's nothing wrong with that. And there are people within the Big Ten, according to some, that are advocating for Utah. I just don't think it's this round. If it comes, it's not going to be till the next, maybe 2026, or maybe at the end of the next Big Ten contract, 2030, 31, or 29, 30.
Yeah. I got a super chat here I want to get to. Daniel Gigax, thank you for the super chat, my man. $4.99 super chat. He says, I want to know what loophole FSU found in the grant of rights contract, and if there is one in the ACC contract. What other conferences have the same grant of rights clause? And that is a question I have not thought about, Daniel. Great observation. That opens up the door for potentially schools from every conference to find a way out if FSU is able to do it with the ACC. I don't know what that clause is or that loophole is, Daniel. I don't think anybody does at this point in time except FSU's attorneys. And who knows if they even do. I still think there's a chance this could all be just a leverage play to try to get the ACC to give them a larger share of the revenue. Now, most Florida State people don't seem to think that. They seem to think it's real. And I'm not saying it's not. Or maybe it could be either or. Maybe they're saying, hey, let's try our hand at this. And if they don't step up to the table, then we leave, right?
They could easily have 3 or 4 different strategies in place that they're trying to pull them all off. One is just FSU centered, and one is more the conference related, breaking the whole thing up, getting the 7 or now we know it's 8 to sort of blow the whole thing up. But I don't think Florida State is taking the same tack that we saw in the Pac-12, where they were pretty much running on one track. It seems to me like this ACC thing is more 8 tracks or 9 tracks, different avenues to get to the end goal. And I don't know, your analysis today, Immaculate, did you take any more from that?
Well, I mean, if going into, it depends upon how deep you want to go. I do have a theory. I don't want to be presenting it as, this is the truth. This is how it is. It could be wrong. As far as how to get out of at least part of the gore. I don't think the initial gore is beatable. What I think that they might have an angle on is the extension. The extension was signed in 2016. That goes to 2036. The original, signed in 2012, goes to 2027. Now, I can go into that theory if you'd like. That's up to you. But if that was to prove out and they could get out of that, people would have to look at this and go, oh, wait, now their deal might only be through 2027. And how much cheaper is that to get out of?
Right.
And it all has to do with the ACC network and ESPN's failure to get it on in time and to get it coverage and to get it put into cable channels. Every single contract requires consideration from both parties that are in that contract. And if either side does not live up to those considerations, there is, the potential for it being challenged. I think that's where the angle is. I think it's all about the ACC network right now.
Great point. I had not considered that, but if they can go in and say, hey, the ACC network as promised is not what it's lived up to.
Right.
this is not what I didn't know this, but I read the other day that Florida State apparently was against it in the first place. But they had to really, really push to get Florida State to even sign on to this ACC network thing. And they finally kind of did it kicking and screaming, I think. So maybe there's, maybe they saw this kind of in advance and just finally caved, that it wouldn't work. Saw that in advance and finally just caved to the rest of the conference. I'm sure they regret that now, but, sometimes these conferences will join hands, so to speak, even though there's probably one or two schools that don't really want to do it.
Well, and there's the SEC play too, right? This could be just a leverage play by these schools to, even though they would like to be in the Big Ten, the SEC is still sitting there, sort of like a stalking cat waiting to pounce if there's an opportunity. So it could be in big, in some hidden room on the campuses of those schools, a big plan to actually use the Big Ten play to actually move parallel or actually side to side from the ACC gore with the ESPN to the SEC gore with ESPN.
Yeah. And this ACC, and the reason I think, going back, and I said that FSU could be using it as leverage, right? And they still could be. But the reason I think there's a good possibility they're not, and they're actually they could have every intention of leaving, is because, and I think it ties into the Big Ten piece. I don't know that these Big Ten schools would have leaked this information, or either the Big Ten or the Oregon and Washington one would have leaked this information today if they didn't feel comfortable that Florida State was potentially leaving the ACC. What do you guys think about that theory?
Oh yeah. I don't know if you want to jump on this real quick. I'll say that Brett McMurphy put out a tweet right after that. The main one went out, with those 4 schools on the West, and his said something to the same thing, but it also added at the end that the Big Ten is also looking at any potential departures from the ACC, and then will take those into the consideration as well. So they're not saying which schools in particular, but we know what they're going at, especially considering Brett McMurphy himself was watching the Board of Trustee meeting today at FSU and putting out play-by-play tweets on his Twitter handle about every single little comment that was made by every single trustee about this. Yep, you got it right there. Yep. That's the big one right there with that. See at the bottom of that, he adds that in, that little caveat.
Right.
And so, Stanford and Cal could get replaced by Florida and Clemson if those are the 2 ACC schools that are ready to announce.
Right. I think it's too ironic that this stuff's all happening almost simultaneously.
Right.
You mean to be a coincidence?
Yes.
Yeah. We've talked about that. It's just it's just too much. I mean,
much.
I've been saying for a while, something like this is going to happen, but we didn't think it was going to happen this quickly. And I knew it had to happen in some kind of coordination, but to see it actually taking place, it was pretty much unprecedented today what happened with that Board of Trustees. I've never seen a show like this. I mean, it was basically their entire trustee, their AD, their president, all going in public with all media watching and laying out that every single one of them wants out of the ACC.
Right.
I mean, they knew who was watching. The media room outside of there was almost all media people. It wasn't like just random folks getting in there. And then you had sports media nationwide tweeting about it live. So
I think what's extraordinary too, Immaculate, is that this stuff was happening in real time. And the news that we're just used to, people are used to this sort of general dribs and drabs of news releases. That's kind of, the last 100 years have set up a sort of paradigm where there would be a tip and then somebody would chase down a clue and then they do interviews and this, that, and the other. This new social media stuff, and it's not just Twitter, it's all of it. Instagram, every right now communication method, even YouTube, enables these groups and these schools to affect change immediately. They don't have to wait to go back and have a discussion. They actually have the discussion right there in real time. And I don't think that's going away. If anything, I think it's just going to continue to be dynamic, and we're going to see it get more and more fluid. And these deals, we're going to wake up one deal and it's just going to be done because they had to do so much in the background.
Yeah. And this tweet Jason Shear put out of just about a half an hour before we went on, says there's an expectation within the Big Ten that this is going to all move fast. There is a meeting tonight with the extension team to assess candidates. Oregon and Washington are currently the leaders, but multiple schools will be discussed. And I want to give a shout out not only to Jason, who's been on top of this realignment stuff from the beginning,
Absolutely.
but Greg Flugar, man.
Yep.
Greg Flugar has taken so much crap from people on Twitter, and Greg Flugar said months ago that Oregon and Washington were being vetted. You know, even before Brett McMurphy said it.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, Greg said it.
Yes.
That the Big Ten wanted Oregon and Washington. A lot of people gave him crap over it, and then McMurphy puts out that tweet a few days later, and a lot of people still didn't want to believe it. And now you've got national media all over the country reporting it, and it's now people. I think it's finally starting to sink in. You know that hey, this is happening, or very well could happen anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I'm real happy to see what's going on with Greg. After been calling in with him for a while, you can kind of sense the weight that was on his shoulders because he's really gone out there. And right now, with everything that's going on, it's like it's a different Greg. I mean, he's kind of light and free and like having a lot of fun with it. And so it's
good point.
Real happy to see it. I'm real happy for the guy. And
very good observation.
And, I love being.
He's just a good human being.
Yeah. He's such a good dude.
Yeah. I have a couple more super chats here I want to get to. Tide Guy, man, thank you for tuning in. Tide Guy is one of those guys you love to hate or hate to love. I don't know which it is, but he and I have gotten in a lot of Twitter battles over the last few months. I even blocked him at one point. But anyway, thank you, Tide Guy, man. Much respect. I want to give him a shout out. First of all, he sent me a DM one day telling me, hey, I was wrong about this whole, because he was one of those people that didn't think anybody would jump conferences.
Yep.
And he apologized. He said, hey, man, I own this one. So it takes a big man to admit he was wrong. But anyway, Tide Guy, thank you for that. And thank you for the super chat. He says, Couz, great show. Look like going to be Big 16 very soon. Congrats. I wish Oregon State could join as well. They culturally fit Big 12 more than some. I saw a tweet by somebody, Tide Guy, today, just a few minutes before I got in here. I can't remember who it was from, that says Oregon State is actually, I think, in the conversation now. I don't know. I'd say everybody's in the conversation. Or maybe it was one. No, actually, it was. I'm taking it back. It was Washington State. Washington State's actually being vetted for that fourth spot by the Big 12, I guess. I don't know.
What's interesting is I think that everybody's learned that the Pac-12's passive, sitting back, wait for things to come to you, was a wrong choice. They made a tactical decision that was absolutely the wrong decision, and their conference could disappear because of it. This is something where if you want to affect change, you have to go get it. You can't sit back and passively wait and hope that somebody's going to rescue you. So this news about Oregon State or Washington State or any school for that matter that might feel like they might be getting left out of this eventual reshuffle, they better get on the horn now. They better have people out doing everything they can to sell their school, because this is a very real point in time where there are going to be schools that simply are not going to be included. And it's not fair. It's not about fairness. It's not even about really how valuable they are. It's about how they can sell themselves and how they can sell their brand. And that brand and the loyalty that comes with it, the competition with rivals. If you're not doing that right now, you're going to end up playing in a league that's much, it's a lesser league. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, I think, and that's one thing you talked about, fairness and not being aggressive enough and all that. People can talk all the crap they want about Brett Yormark, but he come in here looking at this thing as a business.
Yes.
Everybody wants to talk about how college sports is a business now. Well, everybody recognizes that except these college presidents and these commissioners. So what happens is the ones who don't treat it like a business, they get their conferences picked apart,
right?
Or don't or don't get TV deals or whatever. Instead they're trying to make alliances with each other, right? Well, that's not Brett Yormark. He's a businessman, and he's going to treat it like a business. So therefore, he's, and people don't, I don't think Greg Sankey likes him very much. He keeps throwing shade at him about every time he gets a chance. For who knows why? But anyway, what's Brett Yormark ever done to Greg Sankey? But Greg Sankey,
Nothing. He upsets the balance, though. He makes people feel uncomfortable because he makes them work for their.
I think he does. I think he's messing up that cart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if people don't like it, but I'm sure Brett doesn't care. That's kind of how he's made his career, is by doing that. But
right.
But yeah, it's a business, man, and you're either going to move forward or you're going to pass it up. And is that where we as fans like it? No, not necessarily. But it is what it is, and it's not. You can't undo it. It's the genie's poured out of the bottle, and you can't put it back in.
Couz, who do you want out of the ACC to come and join us in the Big 12? What is your dream scenario?
Oh, my preference: Virginia Tech, Pitt, Louisville, and probably NC State. I guess if I had to pick a 14.
That's a good draw. I like that. That would be some good football.
Because I think UNC is going to end up in the Big Ten or the SEC at some point.
Right.
So
Louisville is the special one, I think. Louisville is the one that's hanging out there. A lot of people think it's going to go one place or another. In fact, didn't you, Immaculate? It was you or Moen who had Louisville in one of the two, right? Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah. Well, there's the aspect to my 25 is that there's a later phase. Like we get to 20 and then we go to 25 because it'll be 5 divisions. So they're just going to add one more team each division.
Right.
I had Louisville possibly in that last one, but the timeline has just gotten so messy right now that I'm pretty much solidly with Louisville in the Big 12.
And we're at an A3 world now too, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can see we're going to end up with 3 conferences.
Yeah.
It's going to be 3 really epically strong conferences, and then it's going to be pretty much a mixture of the AAC and the Mountain West and the leftovers from the ACC.
I'm really happy for West Virginia and how this is going because these guys.
Oh, for sure.
I've been watching this for so long. West Virginia has been the most kicked around school in college realignment, in my opinion, that there is. Starting from the Big East, being left behind by everybody, to all that came and all that was said to you guys, and then having to go join the Big 12, which turned out to be an amazing decision ahead of time. And everything that you guys have gotten on that. So to see that you guys are going to get Louisville, Cincinnati already, and quite possibly Pitt, and then kind of have like a tight division in that area. Right. That would just, I think if you guys got that would make the whole thing kind of worth it.
Oh, it definitely would, man. I'll tell you, the day that we had in Colorado, I couldn't wipe a smile off my face for about 2 days.
I imagine.
Look, it doesn't really benefit West Virginia specifically or directly because, they're way out west, another Western team. But, man, just to be in a conference that's actually adding Power 5 teams is it's the first time in history that's happened for us.
It is.
Our conference is usually the one getting picked apart. So it's really nice to be. I don't know how long it'll last. Let's enjoy it while it lasts. But who knows what will happen in this next wave? But I really think as long as we have Brett Yormark running the league, if he doesn't get taken up, stolen away, for more money or something. But I really think as long as he's running the league, we're in pretty good hands, and he'll have us in a pretty good spot. We'll never catch the SEC or the Big Ten in money.
Well, but if SEC does not play this right. If they sit back there and this old traditional slow to move type of mentality, which Sankey has, whereas the Big 10 and the Big 12 now are ran by corporate CEOs who move fast, move hard, get in quick. They're fighters. If the SEC is not ready to move, they could see this all pass them up. And I'm not saying anytime soon, but if the Big 10 goes coastal and they get down into the Southeast with, say, a Florida State, a Clemson, and some other options, I don't think that the SEC has such the handlehold on all the recruits down there. And the Big 12 is kind of acting fast and forward. So who knows who they're going to get? We'll see. I don't want to make some crazy long-term things, but
I see where you're going with it.
Yeah, I think
they've been adamant they don't want to get out of their little regional bubble, right?
Yeah, right. And if that regional bubble gets popped by the Big 10, now what? Their whole path, their whole investment is all down that line. They don't have a wide-ranging selection now to go do.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me get to the super chat real quick. John Marzullo, thank you for the super chat, my man. $4.99. I think he might be a Pitt fan, but that's okay. Call me crazy, but I don't know that the network money is there or at least guaranteed. I think there's a reason Big 12 and SEC deals aren't as long. I think you're referring, John, to the fact that, some of these media companies are not doing great, ESPN specifically financially, and maybe the money. Is that what you're referring to there? Or are you referring to the PAC money? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure where you're going with that comment, but I think he maybe was referring to the ACC. Oh, okay. I bet he's referring to the ACC deal being so long that he don't know if the network's going to have the money to pay it all for that many years.
Well, and now you have
of expansion money too. Like there's not enough money for all this expansion.
Right, and now the current Pac-12 offer that's on the table is all subscription based. There's a base. It's almost like, and this blows me away. We're talking about top end college athletics, billion-dollar entities, and yet they're talking. This Apple proposed contract would be a base pay like a server at a restaurant, and then they get to keep the tips. It's a remarkable document to propose that these guys actually plan their entire organizational model on some sort of a base plus payment plan, and it's just crazy if you think about it. So say the world falls apart and they have to sign that deal with Apple, it's going to put them way behind in the exposure bubble, and money is going to basically cease to exist. They're going to be running a loss leader every year, and I just can't see Arizona State, and Utah with options decide to sign on to that. I think that would be insane.
Yeah. Kenny Evans, who's a channel member, by the way, I've got my pub level, which is my entry level members, scrolling along the bottom of the screen.
Awesome.
Kenny Evans is one of those. Kenny, he says, where do you all see the other independent schools go?
Nice.
Good question, Kenny. I like that. It's out of the box, man. I think Notre Dame will stay independent, to be honest with you. They really value their independence. And now some of these moves the Big Ten are making, maybe they're trying. It almost seems to me like they've given up on getting Notre Dame and have just kind of, hey, Notre Dame's not coming. Let's go get somebody else.
You're talking about the Big Ten?
The Big Ten, yeah, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I think they just decided Notre Dame's not coming. Let's go get the other valuable entities out there.
Right.
But I think Notre Dame just values their independence too much. I know they asked for $75 million. I don't think they actually expect to get it.
That's crazy.
But if they can land 50, 55, 60 million, they might be okay with that.
Remind me, guys, aren't we talking about 60 or 70 million for only 6 or 7 games?
Yes.
That is crazy. There's professional leagues that don't pay out that well.
Yeah.
I just don't know how that's tenable.
I think it's the big ask. We ask for so much that we know they can't take, so then we have our excuse for why we have to give up our independence.
That was the whole excuse that they did for the Pac-12, is like make this huge ask an excuse.
Yeah, they hired an NBC executive. The NBC executive whose job was to deal with Notre Dame in that deal. So now if he's not there, what does that say for NBC's, vision going forward? Oh, well, we're just going to get, let the guy go who was doing that. So, and he goes to replace the job that dealt with him. So I think they're not going to get what they want, and they're going to have to make a selection. I don't know if you want to go into the other. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, so you evidently do think they will join the league eventually.
I think they're going to have to because NBC does not have to sign with them at this point in time. They're doing their rest of their contract out and doing 2 games a Saturday because of that. But once that contract's over, they could just shift over to doing 2 games with the Big Ten, and that's more content to then buy, which is more content or more money for the Big Ten for them to then expand. So as far as we know, it's already set in stone. Like when that ends in 2025, they're going to be bringing in more content via expansion. Notre Dame, hopefully they see, the writing on the wall, so to speak, because that's a huge brand and it deserves to be part of the discussion going forward. Yeah, and, absolutely. They might as well join the Coast to Coast Conference because that's what they want out of their independent scheduling. So,
yeah. David Hackett, another channel member, with a comment here, guys. David says, Couz, Matt Berry, ESPN with Paul Feinbaum stated Greg Sankey, SEC looking to add 4 schools and having discussions to get ahead of Big Ten. I guarantee you they are.
There it is.
Yes.
I mean, I was listening to that interview today, and they talked about the Big 12 piece, and then once they got through, they started talking about SEC. So I turned it off. Now I wish I'd have kept listening, but I would have heard that. But no, that's interesting, David. I appreciate you sharing that piece of information. The SEC is always really quiet about what they do, you know, and they don't seem to leak a whole lot. Now that might change now in today's climate, but it seems like everything leaks now. But
I think they're going to have to.
When Oklahoma and Texas came, joined, it was nobody knew anything. Nothing leaked until it was basically a done deal. So
that's true. And but we've been waiting for this though, because this is what we were saying. SEC has to respond, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to come back at this. They can't just roll over for this. So this is, I would say, this is it. And of course, ESPN was going to be the mouthpiece for that because of that deal. So strap in. I mean, this could be a fight. We're going to see. Maybe they're going to offer FSU something. We'll see.
Yeah. Got another super chat here from John again. Thank you, John. He says, not guaranteed to go up at every – he was talking about his question earlier from the let me put that question back up about the networks running out of money. He says it's not guaranteed to go up at every negotiation.
Right, that's true.
So, yeah.
Right.
The bubble.
And in fact, the Big Ten might not get that money back. It might end in, when is it, 29 or 30? And that money, that might be the last big contract. You could easily see a fallback where it drops to maybe 60 or 65 a team. But that's a distinct possibility. 2026, just for all the listeners, and I'm sure you've been telling them this, Justin, but the 2026 negotiation for the college football playoff really is the next major benchmark. Once this realignment gets settled, and we think it's probably going to happen fairly quickly, certainly in the next 12 months, then the next marker is 2026. And that negotiation actually has already started. Greg Ormark has already come out and said that negotiation is in the door, and it's just a matter of when those leaks start and what we find out about it. But it's going to completely change the paradigm. What everybody's used to, the voting, the top 25, I would open your mind that it could literally be any qualification method. They can make up their own rules. They're not tied to the NCAA, and who knows? There might be a seeding system. There might be points assigned to each game. Anything's on the table, and that's why this reorg right now, this realignment is such a big deal, and you don't want to miss the bus.
If I could add an interesting little detail on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The way the CFP works is there are the board of directors. There's one from each conference and then one for Notre Dame. These are basically votes on how to run it. Now, interestingly enough, we're talking about conferences that might disappear.
Right.
What happens to those votes on the CFP thing right now as we're going into negotiations for 2026? There's a bigger political play at work here for a lot of money. And how that gets determined, like we could see something like conference playoffs then leading into a national playoff. But that means conferences are going to get bigger chunks of money. So now you've got schools that want to be in a different conference to get a bigger chunk of money leading up to that vote. It gets very complicated and hazy, but people need to remember how that conference or the championship football playoff actually gets voted for. And not just on top of that, that means that people need to look at what happens at the G5 ranks. What conferences start pulling in schools, what conferences maybe merge. Because whenever that happens, if a conference goes away, a vote goes away.
Right. That's a great point. I had not thought about that. And I'll tell you something else that I have thought about, and I'd like to get your all's thoughts on this. You know, this is all exciting to talk about, the realignment stuff. I mean, I'm addicted to it, man. I love it. But here's the problem. Right now, there's a Power 5, probably soon to be a Power 4, and it could dwindle down to a Power 3, right?
Right.
Do we really want the SEC and Big Ten to have all that power?
No.
Because the less power conferences there are, the more power the ones remaining have. So if it gets down to a Power 3, say the Big 12 is that third conference standing, and the SEC and Big Ten could outvote the Big 12. You know what I'm saying?
Are we talking
about issues that are Power 5? I'm not talking about college football playoff
The autonomous stuff. The
Yeah, you're
autonomous
talking
vote.
autonomous.
Yes,
Right.
yes. The governance things that they always, that the autonomy 5
But
conferences.
those schools
vote
not
on.
in conferences though are still going to get a vote, right? Unless they completely blow the whole thing up. Go ahead, Immaculate. Go ahead.
Well, the votes based upon they were given to the schools that were in those conferences at the time when the autonomy conference system was set up in 2015. By adding an additional school, they get an additional vote. Each conference on our own also has 3 votes, which come in the form of 3 student athletes that get put forward to be those voters, so to speak. So if we're losing those conferences, they lose those votes. Schools moving between power conferences, it's just, the votes in this conference instead of that conference, which is one of the reasons why I've posited that the Big 12 got the deal that they did that said, any P5, you get this money. They just did not want them to make any more G schools into P schools, which makes new votes.
Right.
So I think it's fine, though, because I don't know what percentage it takes to pass everything. But if you're a third of the votes, that's probably enough to have a major say in anything that comes forward.
Yes.
That's fair.
So if it was just the P2 or A2, we kind of call them A2 and A3 now.
Yeah.
If it was just them, then now there might be reason to wonder and worry if you're outside of that. But the thing about the autonomy vote that happens is if they vote something in, anyone else in Division I can then take that and institute it themselves. So it kind of becomes, in a way, somewhat of a representational government, because if you're those other schools and you'd like to have something happen, you could probably present it to the A's, and if it works for them too, then it'll probably get instituted. And so even some of the G conferences, they're still going to get to do everything. Like if there's conference playoffs that come in the future, they'll get to do that. So
I still think though that you can't disenfranchise an entire half of the schools that would compete. And essentially what it would be is if you put the 2 conferences together that are currently the A2, now be the SEC and the Big Ten, they're still only a third of the rest of the voting members. So the chance that they're able to break away and basically insulate themselves from these other schools and conferences that carry just as much weight and have just as much gravitas, but maybe don't have as much of a media deal, I don't see that happening. Not without huge lawsuits, antitrust, and some other monopoly things. So I wouldn't be afraid of that.
Right. And as long as one thing I heard somebody say the other day that was a great point. If Brett Yormark, a lot of people are criticizing Brett Yormark for this basketball, for his desire to make it such a strong basketball conference, because basketball doesn't move the needle as much as football financially. But if you have some of the best schools in the country in basketball in your conference, like Kansas, Arizona, Baylor is really good at basketball now. I mean, if you go on down the list, if you have 6, 7, 8, 9 teams every year in the NCAA tournament, that tournament brings in a ton of money.
Right.
Yep.
They're always going to have a seat at the table as long as they have those blue blood or even next level down. The upper level basketball schools in the league, they're always going to have a seat at the table because the NCAA tournament's too important not to. And that was a great point.
And
so it's about money, you know what I'm saying?
100%. And just to take it back on kind of a light political course, it also gives the Big 12 a lot of negotiating power with the NCAA directly. If you become the major basketball conference power in the country, and they're always like the one thing that the autonomous groups couldn't touch with the agreement is they can't touch March Madness. They can't touch the tournament. That's still completely ran by the NCAA, and no rules can be made to attend to that. But it gives you a lot of power within the NCAA for that reason. And also, if you guys go with basketball only schools, you could go larger than 24, 25. You could go up to 30. You could go up to whatever if you get that separate basketball deal. So those become A5 votes too. So you could actually, per conference, have more votes than the Big Ten or the SEC.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a little, because of my Big East days, I'm a little skittish about bringing in all these basketball only schools because if they have if their vote counts the same as a football school, they could outvote the football members of the conference, or at least have enough votes to kill something that the football schools want. I mean, that's a lot of that was the reason the Big East fell apart. Basketball schools and football schools weren't pulling the rope in the same direction, and it caused the conference to die. But and I don't want that to happen again.
Right.
No, I think a vital part of that, and then I'll let Nate take over on that, but I think a vital part is that he wants to have the contracts be separate.
Mm-hmm.
And if he was to do it all in one altogether, then I think you're running into that problem. But by separating them, having them on two different contracts, I think that helps you define how the basketball-only schools don't get a part of the football money.
Great point. Yeah.
Call out your Justin. You want to?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, man. Tim, thank you for the reminder. Timothy Hetrick Jr., a new channel member, man. We appreciate you joining Couz's Corner VIP Club, man. You are the newest member, Timothy Hetrick Jr. Thank you, man, for the membership. That means a lot. An easy way to support the show. If it's a $2.99 a month or $4.99 a month, comes right out of your PayPal account or your bank account, whatever. You don't have to worry about it, man. And it's a very easy way if you want to support what I'm doing here. If you like the work we're doing here at Couz's Corner, we appreciate it. And we have another super chat. R Webb, thank you for stopping in. R Webb, thank you for the super chat. Evening, guys. I think folks think SEC and Big Ten are partners. I would offer they are a bit of rival. The Big 12 can play the middleman or middle on. Yeah, that's right. A good point, R Webb.
Mm-hmm. It's good
thinking. I
thinking.
hadn't considered. Yeah.
Play one against the other, and keep your leverage. And what was Immaculate was just saying, and what you were intimating earlier, Justin, is that at the end of the day, we're talking about media contracts here, and media contracts don't drive the universities. It's the reverse, right? So the universities, that's why the Pac-12 has struggled to get something, because there's this bipolar sense. They want the organization that is the education and research to be tied to the athletic, right? We heard that over and over for the last year. But what we've now come to realize, and what a lot of us already saw, is that while your education is primo and you can keep that front and center as you want, at the end of the day, the thing that most people are paying attention to is the media exposure and where you're competing. And nobody wants to be competing at what they would perceive to be a lesser conference. So we just have to keep that in mind, that if we're acting like ADs, we have different requirements than if we're presidents of these universities. And squaring that circle has been the hardest part of it. And the Big Ten and the SEC have done the best at it. But now here comes Brett Yormark, and he's also saying, "Hey, I'm right with you."
Yeah.
To go in on that chat there real quick, we'll call that the fistful of dollars plan right there. If you're familiar with that movie before, that's exactly what they did, and the name sure is pertinent right now.
Yep. Absolutely.
Great analogy, man. I appreciate that. Let's move on to the next. We kind of touched on the Florida State thing, but we didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of it. So I'd like to kind of dig into that a little bit. Basically, just to update everyone, Florida State's Board of Regents or Board of Governors, whatever they call themselves, met today, and it was just a regular board meeting, and it wasn't even on the agenda to discuss conference affiliation or anything like that, but it did come up in the meeting, and there were some very interesting remarks from several of the trustees and even the school president today, and I'm going to read off a few of those for you guys. Brett McMurphy was, like I think Immaculate mentioned earlier, he was basically tweeting in real time about it today. And some of the comments were like, let me find the first one here. First one was, and this one was kind of an odd one. It says, by one of their board of trustees, it says, "I don't know anyone who will be opposed to free money. If so, hit the mute button."
That's awesome.
I think that was one of the first quotes of the meeting.
It was a very entertaining meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was for sure.
Did you guys watch it?
Oh, I watched it from the very beginning.
I listened to it. I'm not some sort of psycho like Immaculate is. I can't tune in that long. I have to get it in bits and pieces. So
yeah. I'll just share this, that way everybody can read along with me here. I feel weird reading to people without it being on the screen. But here it says, their president said, "We are not satisfied with our current situation. We love the ACC. Our goal to stay in the ACC, but to stay in ACC under current situation is hard for us to figure out how we remain competitive unless there is a major change in revenue distribution within ACC." So, I mean, point blank, for us to stay here, we got to have a change. That's why I made that comment earlier. Is this a leverage play for them to get a bigger chunk of the distribution? I don't know. Then you've got another quote by him that says, "I think FSU at some point will consider leaving the ACC unless there is a radical change in distribution." Again, directly said it. Might consider leaving. I mean, I don't know what else it's right here. This one was the one that I really, really liked. From Drew Weatherford, who's a former quarterback at Florida State. Mm-hmm. It's not a matter of if we leave, but how and when we leave. Boom, yep. Bomb dropped right there.
He was the very first trustee to come out and talk after the AD and the president did. And even the next person what happened said, "I don't know how I go after them, but this," I mean, everyone in there was just kind of quietly listening to him. And he pretty much stole the show right there.
What's interesting is that everybody saw this coming. None of this was a surprise to the people that have followed it very closely. The information, just like with Colorado, people who screamed and yelled in Pac-12 land that the Colorado move blindsided them and caught them off guard and all this other nonsense is just bunk, because there was so many little steps and little pieces of bread left for bread trails and other things that led everybody to know. If you had followed, for instance, your show or our shows, you would have already known that Colorado was more than likely moving, because they had been treated like the redheaded stepchild the entire time they were in the conference. They wanted to stay in the league, but did they really? I'm a firm believer that while they wanted the attachment to Stanford and the academics out west, at the end of the day, their heart was still in San Francisco, as they say. It was still in the Big 12. And so I don't think this isn't a shock to me. It certainly is news. But if you've been tracking this, the FSU and Clemson stuff, the only question in my mind is, are they playing the Big Ten to get to the SEC, or are they just outright saying it's going to be the Big Ten regardless of the SEC? Right. Those are really the only two questions.
Yeah. I mean, did you guys watch the Colorado Board of Regents meeting the other day?
I did. I watched that one from start to finish. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. And you could not, there was a couple of I know of at least two of those Board of Regents members at Colorado that was ecstatic to go back to the Big 12. Because, you know why? Because they're fans, just like we are.
Right.
And they went to school at Colorado when they played in the Big 12, and they said, that for them it was like nostalgia. We're going back home. This is where we belong. They wanted to go back. Now, there were a few that were a little more, there were a couple that were a little bit more, sensitive to the academic side and all that, but of the Pac-12. But there was one guy in particular, he couldn't raise his hand fast enough. He's like, "Yeah, I'm all for it."
Right. The emotion that they had. There was a couple of female trustees, I can't remember their names, but they were like, "We want our university for people to see it." They're like, we've disappeared in the last 12 years. Nobody even knows who we are anymore because we've been on this Pac-12 network, and frankly, our team hasn't been great. And so we've lost all that level of exposure. By coming back to the Big 12, they're immediately relevant again. They're at the top of the table because of Prime. It's a perfect time to make a move. And the fact that they moved early secured them a spot that might not be there for a school like Washington State or Oregon State.
Absolutely. And then one more quote from today's Florida State Board of Regents meeting, and then we'll move on. We'll discuss it and move on. It says, Justin Rolfe, a trustee, says, "A solution under current ACC TV deal very unlikely. Leads us to what's next. The alternative for us staying in this conference for next 13 years is death by 1,000 cuts."
Right.
Pretty dramatic, right?
Absolutely. Evocative. You really can imagine what that death would look like. Your program basically ceases to be relevant. And everybody remember that Colorado team like 600 years ago that won the national championship? Does everybody remember that? Because nobody else will.
Right. He said wedding is not the answer.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
they need an exit plan within the next 12 months.
I think they need one for the next 2 weeks.
Well, if they want to leave by 12 months, they need one in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because August 5th is the cutoff. So if they want to leave next year by this time, yeah, they gotta get this done here pretty quick, whatever they're gonna do. So I'm expecting a lot. Like we're seeing now from the ESPN and the SEC in response. So hold on.
This
Yeah,
note from
crazy.
Sergeant Pickles where he says, Colorado also failed themselves in the PAC. They had all the resources to be what Utah is and couldn't get it together. That could not be more accurate. It's absolutely a lack of leadership at the top of Colorado.
Mhm.
And they're trying to basically say, oops, screwed up. We want a do-over.
Yeah. OPD Don, thank you, my man, for the $20 super chat. Opie says the only thing that could have been any crazier than when FSU just did would have been Notre Dame coming out and saying they were joining a conference in 2025. Hey, wait,
Yeah.
FSU can take 23 months to get things done. So just maybe, LOL.
I
Good
love
point.
it.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Opie, man. Thank you for the generosity.
And
man.
I'm really
We appreciate
loving these $20 donations you're getting on your super chats. I don't get many of them, so that just shows you how
it. I
important you
don't
are.
get many either. So, Opie,
I
man,
don't
you're
get
too,
many of those.
you're too generous, Opie, man. We appreciate it.
Really good community members.
It means a lot. It really does. But yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, everybody's kind of waiting. What's Notre Dame? And let's remember their TV contract with NBC expires next year. So
Yes.
we could hear something on them at any time. You know, and I can't help but wonder if some of these parties, these conferences, or these schools know what's going on with Notre Dame. And a lot of this stuff is occurring because of that. You know, you never know.
Right.
Well, I'll say this. I've said it in other places. I will never accept an explanation that Notre Dame earned their AAU status all on their own.
Of course
No.
they didn't.
They don't do medical research. They have big problems with some of the medical research that many of the schools in the AAU do. Their research is at in the 200s of millions versus
Right.
like schools that didn't get in, like Virginia Tech and North Carolina State, are in the 500s of millions. So the fact that they got in, there's a game being played underneath them. We're just starting to see what's going on.
So far, that makes me. I know those AAU universities are awesome universities, so I'm not bashing them at all. But it makes me think that AAU thing is a farce.
Oh, it's dirty.
You know, it's just a political.
It's
Yeah.
It's a club. You want to go be in the club
Yeah.
and go have the talks with the club. And so
Yep.
to the people, the administrators, there is a dollar value with it, because going in there and being in there will give you opportunities. But yes, from the outside looking in, it's dirty.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Arizona State one I had no issue with. The USF one, I mean, USF does a lot of research. I didn't realize
They
it,
do.
but they do.
They do.
'Cause I kind of went back and looked after that was announced to do a comparison.
Mhm.
Notre Dame does hardly none. It's baffling, man. It's really baffling.
It was glaringly obvious.
Yes, it was.
It was, and then so that's when you had to look at that and go, okay, well, who else was in it with them? Miami, that's interesting. ASU, that's interesting, because I've said ASU is a dark horse for the Big Ten for a while, and the thing that most people say in response is no AAU. It's like, okay, what now? You know,
Mhm.
so I don't think they're going to the Big Ten now. Things have gone in a different direction, but you know, it's still good for them in the meantime.
All right. Yeah, Opie, thanks again, man, for the $20 donation. Very generous of you, my friend.
Let's talk about this August 15th date.
Yes,
And clarify that.
That's perfect. You're on the same wavelength.
Go ahead. You can.
No,
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay. So in case you're new to the story, which if you are, it's insane. I don't know how you could be new, but there is a date for the ACC that they have to declare by August 15th if they're going to be leaving the conference or not. There's some triggers that have to do with the gore and how the media pay out. And we all know that if they're going to buy themselves out, legal maneuver or not, it's going to cost a lot of money. and they need to lessen that by declaring by August 15th. So there is a time limit here. It's not a fictitious one that Brett Yormark just creates to get people to move. It's not one created by the president of Ohio State to try to leverage and get Clemson and Florida State into the Big Ten. It's a hard and fast date, August 15th, that they need to make a decision before they can move. And if they make that decision, then it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that they're going to bust the thing up and move right along. So that's something that is tangible. People, it's not just the three of us talking about it and sort of wishing it into existence. It actually exists, and something will have to be done if this is going to happen, at least for this next calendar year.
Hey, could I say something real quick? Would you mind?
Sure.
I just want to clarify some of my point earlier is not to disparage the AAU and everything that goes on there. There's a lot of great research that goes on there. I'm saying there's a bunch of worthy institutions to go into that. And when one institution, which clearly is behind many of them, gets in instead of them,
Yes.
whom actually would be better off being in that institution,
Right.
I say that is dirty. I am not trying to say that the whole entire AAU is dirty.
Right.
It's just that, a lot of good work goes there, and it's an important, but in this one case, some politics got involved.
Right.
Has somebody
Yeah,
said something to you, Immaculate?
Oh, no, it's just chat going on out in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Somebody said that anyone who's against AAU is a communist, basically.
Oh gosh! Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
That's an aged reference.
yeah,
To say
and
the
I
least.
and I just, but he's saying he's a veteran, and I respect that, and I just wanted to let him know, like, that
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to say anything disparaging about that and the whole
Yeah.
concept. It's just, you still got to be able to look at it and say this move and this one in particular is dirty, and it's fine. It is what it is. It's their decision.
Yeah, I mean, that person in the chat, I mean, they have a right to that opinion. I'm not, I think it's way off base, but that's okay. And I respect them serving our country. Absolutely. Do you guys have
Greg's
anything
in the
else?
house.
You guys have anything else? Hey, Swain, what's up, man? You guys have anything else on the Florida State topic before we move on to? We've kind of been talking about the Big 12 situation, but I have a little bit more on it, I think.
Right. I just would say that I think people just put on your hard hats and just be ready to bounce around a lot in the next 2 weeks. Don't jump ahead of the story. Don't try to interpret news when it actually is out there to actually be consumed. You don't have to make up a story when the news is being basically given to all of us. And this is where shows like Couz Corner come in play, because we don't interpret the news. We basically put it out there for you guys to decide on your own and then have conversations about it. The Florida State Clemson stuff is real, and it could happen as early as tomorrow or, the 14th or 15th of August. I just want to prepare everybody that this is just the beginning. It's what did we say last week? It's the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Greg Swain, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to go on top of it, if you don't mind, just to say it's kind of how great of a time it is when a gentleman like yourself and us, we can sit here. McMurphy was there with us side by side, tweeting out every single little moment of this, not because this is so much special in the moments, but because we are all now at front stage right away. So he's got to go that far to kind of stay at the front and the head of this. And so all of us, we were seeing it at the same time as him. I remember seeing his tweets coming up going, yep, I just saw that. Yep, I just saw that. So we have a lot of information now that we can all kind of together come and bring together and get the same picture that maybe they don't even want us to see. So it's a pretty exciting time. And I know for some people, there's a lot of emotion involved with that, but
right. Yeah.
I think we can definitely get kind of this picture put together.
OPD Don, $5 super chat. Thank you, my man. He says, if there are 131 Division I universities and there are 71 in the AAU now, just how exclusive is that club? Since 54.7% are in it.
It's not just Division I.
Yeah, and not only that, but AAU is is more about the academic affiliation. The sports part is important, but that's more exclusionary than it is inclusion. In other words, they put this together, this club, to keep others out. And I won't go into those that are referenced, but a lot of private institutions, a lot of faith-based institutions, they do not fit into the AAU paradigm, and they're basically left out, not because they wouldn't qualify as highly well-respected academic institutions, but because they won't meet certain political messaging and educational driving type things. So
Right.
is AAU cool? Sure. But is it really what's driving the bus? Ask Alabama, ask Clemson, ask Ohio. Well, Ohio State is, but there's a lot of Auburn, all the, last 10, 20 years, there's not been a ton of AAU winners of the championship.
Yeah. Opie, and at the end he says, now it's $25, LOL. Thank you, my man. So you had I do want to address this comment here by Anthony Manzano. It says, do you guys think what happens, let's say specifically the football programs for Clemson, Miami, Florida State, go to another conference? Does the ACC transition to a baseball conference? And then down here he added to it, he said, and try to look at other conferences with great baseball programs and try to bring them into the ACC. Anthony, I love baseball. I respect baseball. I played it all through high school. It was actually my best sport. But I have to say no, man. Baseball does not make money. There's a few schools out there where it does, but for the most part, baseball is not a moneymaker at all. So if you're relying on baseball, then your school is in the tank. And your athletic department will probably go broke. I mean, just to be blunt about it. But I love the comment and I love the thought, but unfortunately, baseball just doesn't move the needle from a financial standpoint. Do you guys agree with my sentiment on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's entertaining, but it doesn't drive revenue at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was even brought up during the board meeting. Some people trying to remember him, like, this is about the other sports as well, what we're doing. And
right.
And it's just kind of a reiteration of these schools are making these moves that are based upon football and basketball to some degree, basketball.
Yeah.
But it's meant to also keep those other sports going. To base a league on a sport that requires the money from the other sports, I hate to say it, but it's just really not feasible.
Right.
Can I answer this question really quick that Connor just put out?
Which one about the Mormon?
It's the second to the last one that's put out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Connor, he and I have gone across time and space on different shows and different opinions, and I respect Connor's opinion, and I know he respects mine. This is one thing, though, that I really need to disagree on, and that is I don't think to be extraordinary means that you're not necessarily in with everybody else. If you're in with everybody else, then you're not extraordinary. You're just ordinary. So to set up standards and to live your life in a way that you feel that is important, and you have an organization that other people feel that way, there's absolutely no issue with those people aligning with each other and being a school, for instance. And we're speaking about BYU specifically. And in my opinion, I don't care what any other school does, but I do expect other people to respect what I do, because I certainly do that to the rest of the world. So if you're talking about any school of faith, and we're not just talking BYU, Baylor, TCU, I mean, long list of schools that are different, that doesn't mean for them to be extraordinary that they need to sign up and be ordinary with everybody else. I just wanted to make sure I got that out there.
No problem, man. No problem. And I have no issue with Cal being or Stanford being an academic, powerhouse, or however you want to describe it.
Right.
That's their university's mission.
Yes.
Each university has a different mission. And if they're
exactly.
a private university,
yeah.
Especially if they're a private university, their mission can be whatever the heck they want it to be.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah.
And Opie said he wanted to make sure he was cleared up. He's not putting down AAU. He just wanted to get that out. Yeah, Opie, we all agree, man. None of us are against AAU, and all of us appreciate what it's about. We just don't like the politics that get involved with deciding who gets in it. it's just not a fair process in a lot of cases. I think that's all most of us, how most of us feel anyway.
Yeah, like a lot of the people that are in there are doing some amazing work. You know, and that's what they do. And the people who are in charge of running these organizations, you know, it gets political at times, and that can get ugly. That's just how it is. That's humans.
Swain says, "Did y'all know that Murph?" And I have no idea who Murph is. It must be someone in the chat.
I think maybe he's saying McMurphy.
Oh, Murph.
Oh,
okay.
maybe.
He's an Oklahoma State guy, perhaps a secret honorary member of the uber successful Big 12 Mafia.
If he wants to show up.
There you go. He'd gladly be welcomed, right?
It might be a little bit tougher room than he's used to, but yeah.
We'd even let him break some news. You'd even let him break some news on the show, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
look, everybody's opinion matters. And it's on your show. It's on everybody else's show. I think everybody should be able to go out and focus on the things that they're most important. But in return, we ask for respect on the backside too.
Right. I want to recognize at the bottom of the screen my club level members at the Couz's Corner VIP. These are the $4.99 a month level members. Their names are scrolling across the bottom there, and earlier it was the pub level, which is the level 1 member. But anyway,
that's a good idea. That's a good idea, Justin. I might steal that from you. I've been struggling with ways to recognize the people that subscribe to our shows, and I've tried. It's been a struggle to come up with ways to make sure those people know they're important. So I might borrow that from you.
No problem, man. I try to do verbal shout outs, but I end up forgetting to do it, or I leave somebody out, or I end up doing the same people multiple times, and it just
absolutely.
I figured this was the easiest way to do it, and it reminds me too to recognize them verbally as well by having it on the screen. So
right.
But there was an interesting tweet put out earlier by Jason Shear that I wanted to share with everybody. Came out. He put it out right before we got on here regarding the Big 12. Let's see. Let me find it again. I lost it. Here it is. Right here.
So I'd also point out to you, Connor made a little comment to you there in the comments, just so you don't miss it.
Okay, thank you. Jason Shear says there's a legitimate chance that the Big 12 is arranging to make a maximum impact with all the movement going on. That means the Big 12 could announce Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah at the same time. Not definite, and I think there are likely leaks before then, but possibility. That would be awesome, just so you know.
Absolutely.
That would be absolutely freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I could see that happening too. If say, I'm gonna have a hard time saying this with our buddy out in there in chat, Connor, but I could see the two Arizona schools, if they're looking at this saying, okay, we're together, who do we want to come with us?
Right.
Utah's in their neighborhood a little bit more than Oregon State. Sorry, Connor, but
well, if Oregon State gets in front of Utah, good for them, and I would absolutely cheer for them. I think Oregon State is a fantastic university, and they're up and coming with their athletics. But honestly, it would be because Utah's asleep at the wheel. If Utah doesn't come now, they're going to get left behind, because just being out and available doesn't mean the Big Ten is going to come along and scoop you up for a song. That's not how this works. Just because you're not in a group doesn't mean because you're a free agent, everybody wants the free agent. That's not how this is going to work.
Right. I see you got that up if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, Connor, I don't know what you're apologizing for, my man, unless you're talking about the debate you and I had on Twitter or whatever. I know you and I went back and forth on a few things, but it's all good, man. I don't take that stuff personal, and but I do appreciate the apology. It takes a big man to apologize, so much appreciated.
And to go on top of that, I think Oregon State should get on. I mean, if anyone's noticed, they just paid for a stadium expansion, and it looks really good. And you've got this top team there, and at this point, you got to look at this and go, man, Oregon State needs to be part of this somewhere. And I wish I have like a big, obvious answer to give on that, but I don't. So, but I'm hoping that they somehow come through this and get in with the Big 12.
Anthony wants to know the craziest scenario for the Big Ten. That's a hard one. To me, crazy is something we won't expect. Like a Notre Dame, not that that's unexpected, but it is for me. I don't think Notre Dame wants to go in the conference personally. They might be forced to eventually, though. Crazy for me would be like I still got this deep feeling in my gut that Texas A&M ends up in the Big Ten. Just so they can
It's
get away from
possible.
Texas. I mean,
That
they didn't
could
want to be in
happen.
the same conference as Texas.
Right.
That's the reason they left the Big 12 in the first place.
Right.
And
But is it enough to walk away from the association that is the athletic conference of all athletic conferences? I mean, nobody is saying that I've heard recently saying that the SEC is going to lose schools because they're not the most competitive. They're not the most competitive, but they are the most loaded. They have the teams that have the most skilled teams, and everybody else is just trying to stay up with them. The Big Ten makes the most money. SEC has the best teams. The Big 12 is the most competitive. I think those are the three storylines we're going to have going forward for the next, probably at least 2 or 3 years.
Right. But he says his crazy scenario for him is Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Washington, Oregon, and Stanford. And it's possible that could happen. I don't think all those teams go. I think a couple of those will end up probably between Miami, Florida State, Clemson, I think at least one of those will end up in the SEC probably. But I could see the rest of them getting into the Big Ten potentially. Who knows?
The only for sure one that I see there is Washington. I think Oregon gets in with them. Florida State clearly looks ready to be able to. But until I see it happen, I'm always going to think that the SEC has a chance if they want to go for it.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that whole list makes it somewhere. But, well, maybe not Stanford. I don't know what's really pushing them. But, yeah.
What are we talking about? Are you talking about getting into the SEC or Big Ten, Immaculate?
I do believe if we go back to the image, I think he was saying all of those getting into the Big Ten.
Yeah,
Big Ten.
Okay.
So that's why I say Stanford. I think the Big Ten would take them if they wanted in. I just don't think they want in. And the rest, go ahead, no, sorry.
I was just going to say the Big Ten has this one thing about sharing research.
Yeah,
and as we know, Stanford doesn't want to share research. They already are sort of keeping stuff away in the Pac-12, and the Big Ten owns everything that they touch. So how you get over that, I think Stanford could go into survival mode and say, you know what, on this one thing, we'll work it out so that we'll share as much of it as we can. And maybe the Big Ten, because they want the brand and the academics, they bring them in. But as of today, unless something changes, those are two, they hit up against each other. There's no way to reconcile that.
Yeah, and if they want a chance to really push the money even further right now, I don't think it's the time to take a kick around team. I think out west you're needing some combinations because you're going to be asking NBC to pay that bill because they're the late night one. Well, the 5:30, the later one show of the Big Ten lineup. So you're asking them to really carry that. And if you're throwing Stanford into that, I think NBC is looking at that and saying no, because they need that stadium to at least be full, and Stanford can never promise that. So I tend to think that knowing that, but I'd say knowing that. I think that Stanford is actually, I could be wrong, but I think they're connected to a lot of the Ivy Leagues when it comes to research.
There's some academics that tied to him. According to Mo and Vision, he said that there were some associations that were loose, but nothing like the Big Ten is now, though.
No, but I'm saying like they might lose some of that because the Big Ten, everything you do is in a collective library. All of your internships are shared. So, prize Stanford internships at tech companies over there would be available to Big Ten schools. There's a lot of details that are just, not fun conversations to have on the sports side of things, but it's the business side of things of how the Big Ten does business. And I just don't know if that really matches well at Stanford.
Thank you to Sergeant Pickles for the $1.99 super chat. Obviously, you can tell he's a Washington Husky, but he's a great supporter of the channel here. He says, from Cascades to Appalachians, go Dogs, and hell, West Virginia. I love it. Love it. Next,
we have a show. We have a show at the top of the hour. Just me, Pickles, and Immaculate, and it is going to be fantastic because for the first time, we're going to hear from a booster from the University of Washington that has been sitting and waiting patiently. And I think now they're at a point where they're agitating for positive change for their school. They don't want to get left out, and they would prefer not to be in the Big 12. But if the Big 10 doesn't open up, are they willing to sit back and a rump Pac-12? I personally don't think they are. I think they would take the best option to them. But that's what Pickles is going to talk about tonight at the top of the hour.
Awesome. Unfortunately, I'll probably be able to tune in later on in the show, but not because I have a pretty.
Well, yeah, you got another commitment. I think that's fantastic. Yeah,
I do, but and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun to actually get to talk about football.
Right, exactly.
Something I'm going to forget how to talk about.
We're getting there, man. We'll get there.
We're close, I think.
Camp started today, and I was all jacked up to do a video about West Virginia's first day of fall camp, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, until this gets settled, unfortunately, I think it's going to be abrupt changes from realignment to let's get into football. I might end up doing 2 shows a day to cover all of the Big 12. I know it's going to be difficult, but those things are a big deal. And for BYU, it's our first one in forever, and I really can't wait to do that. But realignment's got to get settled first.
Opie says, I do not see A&M going to the Big 10 as they were trying to get into the SEC for a decade. But if they did, then Texas would follow them there.
Right, exactly.
Then what, A&M? Then what, A&M to the MAC? That's my opinion.
That's funny. It's funny. Maybe.
But was Texas A&M trying to get into the SEC to get away from Texas? That's the thing.
Well, and this kind of brings up the question: what is the highest priority? These schools all have a highest priority list. What are the top 5 things that they need to have, and in what order? And if it's exposure, you're going to make one decision. If it's money, you're going to make a different decision. If it's education, you're going to, and it just sort of goes that way. And you do this cost benefit analysis, find out the one that meets the most markers with the highest level, and that's the direction you take your university. And that's why this is so complex, is because while unity statements are fantastic, each school has their own goals.
Yeah. Texas A&M is not going to the Big Ten. Look, they may not. It's just a theory I have. Something that could happen. When the Big Ten makes more money, they love to be in Texas. Texas could make more money and get away from their arch nemesis, so to speak. And they could have a recruiting advantage by being the only school in Texas, which they did have in the SEC until now.
Right, of course.
See what I mean? But
I'd have a hard time seeing it, but you know what? It's. I'd have to say it's at least a possibility. They did it once.
I also never thought Utah, of course it hasn't happened yet, but I also never thought Utah would become the Big 12 either. But
if Florida State and Clemson picked the Big 10 instead of the SEC, for some reason I find it less crazy to think of Texas A&M in the Big 10 as the sole Texas school, and who knows who else then. What about Oklahoma?
They want to be unique.
Yeah.
Texas A&M wants to be unique.
Right.
So I could easily see them making that move.
Like I said, I think they're a good academic school.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
They're a great brand. I mean, they've not been hugely successful, but their fans are very passionate. They see them, what's their stadium, hold 100,000 people?
Yeah, but they've been running from Texas for decades.
Yeah.
50, 60, 70 years they've been running to get away from Texas. They finally did it. Went to the SEC, and then the SEC completely undercuts them and says, okay, you're important, but you're not that important. We could get Texas, which is the bigger brand. So I could see it's not out of the realm. If I was to put a percentage on it, I could see a 5 or 10% conversation where they have a board of regents nobody's paying attention to, and they're passing emails back and forth, and they're like, okay, now Armageddon is had. Texas is in with us again. Anybody up for possibly going to the Big 10? I could see that happening.
I saw a comment earlier, and I don't remember who put it up, but it basically was Ray Anderson, I think, had an interview today. I think he was on 365, actually. The AD at Arizona State. And I didn't get a chance to watch it, but they said he has extremely changed his tone, and basically it's like tell us you're going to the Big 12 without telling us you're going to the Big 12. So I'm looking forward to going back and finding that interview and listening to it later, because I didn't get a chance to listen to it.
Don't these
You guys-
schools want to stay relevant?
Huh?
Don't these schools want to stay relevant?
I think, yeah.
They
I
want to
mean,
stay in the public consciousness, right? They want people
Right.
to pay attention to them. That's the best way to do it. It's the best way to do it, is get in a conference that you're now competitive in, and that the whole world watches these games every Saturday.
Yeah.
Not the Pac-12 network, not some Apple monstrosity that they sublease games. And I mean, they got to be pragmatic. Even Utah administration needs to be pragmatic at this point.
Yeah, I love that. Even though I've gotten into it on Twitter with several Utah fans, I'd love to have them in the league. They're a great brand.
Right.
Having the BYU Utah rivalry in the league would be fantastic for the league.
Yes, it would.
And they're a really
Yeah.
good football team, and have
Yep.
been for quite a while now. And their basketball team has moments of being good too.
It's been a while, but yeah, for sure.
yeah.
They have had it. Yeah,
The Rick Majerus days.
you bet. Absolutely.
Andrew Barchak, thank you for the super chat. He says, so if Big Ten doesn't take A&M to get into Texas, who do you think is even a possibility?
I would say it's Texas or Texas A&M, and I mean, if it's just one, I think Texas A&M is just fine for it. I mean, they're going to have to get out of the exit fee that the SEC has, the Texas exit fee. They never had an exit fee until Texas and Oklahoma came to town, and then miraculously they decided we need an exit fee for some reason. I wonder what caused that to happen.
Right.
But no, I think Texas A&M could hold it down on their own. They've always had major brand potential.
Yeah.
They have everything that you possibly need to be a tier 1 brand. I think that it's true that they left to go try to become that, to get out from underneath Texas's shadow.
Right.
And here they are again.
Right. Well, guys, I don't really have anything else to say. I think we pretty much covered all of today's news in an hour and a half here. Give you guys a chance to plug yourself one more time, and any last comments? Go ahead, Nathan.
I just want to thank everybody for watching the Couz's Corner. This is a great show. It's one of the first shows that I tuned into months and months ago, talking about social media and tracking realignment and also Big 12 stuff. I hope everybody subscribes, gives a good comment, and always thinking positive. Positive thumbs up. Not talking negative about other people. I'm done with that. And I hope everybody else sort of walks away from that negativity. My shows are Big 12 Mafia and the Holy Rivals. Both are on YouTube. And you can find me on Twitter as at B12 Mafia and at the Holy Rivals. And I hope to see you on my show. I got a show at the top of the hour. I'll have Immaculate, and we're going to have Sergeant Pickles representing University of Washington. And I really want to thank you, Couz, for letting us in. And I'm really honored that you to have us on your show today.
Hey, man, it goes both ways. Immaculate, go ahead, man. Tell everybody.
All right. Appreciate it. My name's Immaculate. I currently am along with Big 12 Mafia on his shows on that end, as well as the Holy Rivals. Might be going out on my own here a little bit, but for now, just having a great time discussing what's been an obsession of mine, and now finally it's become the rest of the country's obsession. So just going to continue to go, and we are, and I really do appreciate you having us on and me being on your show. I've watched you for a while, and I kind of see you as now carrying the torch for the WVU fans. And I used to be a big watcher of Blue and Gold Dude, and it's kind of sad to see because he would have loved this, but I really am appreciative of being here, because that's kind of how I see you for that fan base. So thank you.
Man. Thank you. It was a great time. Someone just said in the chat, I wonder how Gold Blue will react to this realignment.
Yeah.
He would love it, man.
Be over the moon.
I'd
He
be
would not
watching
be able
all of
to
his
control
videos.
himself. He might just turn his life into one long live stream. Everywhere he goes to make dinner, he's live stream. He's going in his car, he's live stream, because Gold and Blue Dude loved this speculation zone and West Virginia and Big 12 and everything associated with it. He was a great advocate. And yeah, again, we both tip our hat to him. And I think you're doing a great job sort of picking up where he's left off.
Well, thank you. I hope I'm doing it justice. Well, listen, guys, Nathan, Immaculate, thanks again for jumping on, guys, and everybody in the chat. We appreciate. Man, this has been we had over 300 people in here. Awesome chat, awesome participation. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the conversation. Special shout out to all those who sent super chats. Thank you for my VIP members. With that being said, guys, I'm gonna have to jump off of here. We all have other shows to get ready for. So everybody take care. I'm out and keep country roads.
Peace out.
Good night.
Good night.